Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Let me be blunt. This looming government shutdown is wildly irresponsible. It's completely unnecessary, and it's utterly pointless. Roughly 20 hardline House Republicans want a shutdown, and Speaker McCarthy is listening to them instead of listening to the American people. I cannot overstate this. The consequences of a shutdown to families, small businesses, and communities in New Mexico and across the country will be dire. In New Mexico, nearly 37,000 women and children on WIC risk losing critical nutrition assistance. Over 13,000 service members in New Mexico are at risk of not getting paid. Families in rural areas wouldn't be able to apply for or receive USDA housing loans. Farmers and producers in the middle of harvest season won't be able to access new loans. Travel will be impacted, and that could include during the Balloon Fiesta, New Mexico's largest tourism event of the year. So if far-right Republicans push us into a shutdown this weekend, businesses will face delayed loans, mortgage applications will fall, and international trade at the border will stall. And we've seen all of this play out before. We know that the costs of a government shutdown are too high. Past shutdowns have raised interest rates, reduced economic output, and jeopardized government benefits, impacts that our recovering economy simply cannot afford. And depending on how long this drags on, this shutdown could even precipitate a recession. We have a job to do, and the only way forward is to pass bipartisan spending bills to fund the government. We had a bipartisan budget deal this summer that both houses of Congress, both parties, and the White House all agreed to. And as a member myself of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I worked in good faith with my Republican colleagues based on that agreement so that we could pass all 12 of our bipartisan appropriations bills out of committee. I'll continue working with members of both parties to move bipartisan legislation forward that will fund our government. House Republicans need to stop wasting time on extreme proposals designed to create chaos, or this shutdown is simply on them. Congressman Vasquez, you've got a seat at the table. You're seeing this right up close and personal in the House. I want to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Senator, for your work on the Senate side to bring forward a responsible budget and or continuing resolution that could help bring relief to not just New Mexicans, but Americans all across the country. What we are seeing today from House Republicans on the extreme right-wing side is a proposal that would cut federal agencies 30% across the board, which is deeply, deeply irresponsible. It is not in line with American values. It is not a proposal that Democrats in the House are going to agree to. And so we're most certainly going into a government shutdown scenario that is going to cause more harm than any type of good that these extreme members are trying to bring forward. Now, in New Mexico, and in my district in particular, we're talking about food for families. We're talking about hungry kids, benefits from WIC and SNAP and TFAP that feed our children would be limited, and some would be eliminated under these cuts. We're talking about wildfire prevention and assistance during a time where we're trying to get benefits out to the victims of the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire and the Black Fire. To be able to not have that support from New Mexicans is completely irresponsible. Healthcare services for rural families. One of the most important things that the government can do is care for people in places in my district like Lordsburg and Deming and Magdalena and Carlsbad. So this shutdown would also impact over 11,000 active duty and reserve personnel in New Mexico that'd be forced to go without pay during a government shutdown. That is not responsible. It does not help our national defense. It does not help people in our rural economies. It also impacts our small businesses. The Small Business Administration has an important role to play in helping develop capital and build wealth in communities all across New Mexico. And without the support of the SBA, we are going to hinder the ability to actually create economic opportunity in the private sector, and that is not acceptable. Lastly, I'll talk about public safety. Right now, we're facing a fentanyl crisis in communities all across the country, and limiting our personnel at Customs and Border Protection in places like Santa Teresa and the Columbus ports of entry is also irresponsible. Not only that, but it is counter to the message that Republicans have consistently delivered about trying to add more resources to make sure that we keep our communities safe at our ports of entry. We desperately need to make sure that we keep this government open. And unfortunately, the dysfunction in the House and bringing forth a proposal that we cannot agree to and that is not realistic is going to hurt New Mexicans. It's going to hurt the American people. And we are going to negotiate in good faith with the Republicans, but we are waiting for them to bring us a proposal that is fair and that is also supporting of New Mexico families and New Mexico communities. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Congressman. I understand you have to go cast your vote. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open up Q&A to Senator Heinrich. To ask your question directly, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen and we will call on you. And please be sure to state your name and affiliate. First, we're going to go to Ryan Botel at the Albuquerque Journal. Ryan, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Looks like we may be having some technical difficulties. So while we figure that out, if folks could please ask their questions in the Q&A chat, and we'll go ahead and read those out until we can start calling on folks. All right, first question from Ryan Botel. Is there any chance of reaching an agreement?
Oh, absolutely. And we are grinding through a bipartisan agreement in the Senate right now to create a stopgap spending bill that is bipartisan, that is supported by both sides, that has had pretty heavy votes for it in the run-up. The procedural votes, we've seen 75, 76 votes. And so we're moving forward on that as quickly as we can. We have sort of our own little chaos caucus in the Senate that is trying to stall that at each step. And that further increases the odds that we may or may not be able to pass that before midnight on Saturday night when the government shuts down. But we are, as I said, negotiating in good faith. We're very close to a deal in the Senate. We will send that over to the House. I think the challenge is going to be that Speaker McCarthy has to choose between these 20 Chaos Caucus members and putting together a deal that would be widely bipartisan and that would put a large majority of the House together. And that's the path to actually getting the government back open again.
Congressman Vasquez, if you'd like to take that question as well from Ryan Botel at the Journal, is there any chance of reaching an agreement?
Well, right now, things are very much up in the air. And in fact, I just voted against this terrible proposal, again, that would hurt New Mexicans. And there's no realistic options on the table as of yet. What we need to do is make sure that the far right wing of the extreme Republican Party right now comes together, perhaps either with leadership or with other folks who are willing to work across the table for a responsible budget or continuing resolution deal. And it's unfortunate that folks are more interested here in Washington about making a statement than they are about helping the American people. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see, is that the pain that will be inflicted in our communities, on our economy, and our families is for nothing more than sound bites in Washington. It is not going to help New Mexicans. So I am hopeful that there will be a deal, and I'm counting on my colleagues in the Senate, like Senator Heinrich and Senator Ben Ray Lujan, to be able to help strike a deal with leadership that we can all agree to. And so we are working as hard as we possibly can as a Democratic caucus. And I can tell you that here in the House, The Democratic caucus is aligned. We get along. We work together well. We compromise. We govern. We work for the people. We can't say the same for the other side. And so until that starts to happen, I'm not sure what kind of deal we're going to be able to strike. But at the end of the day, I am hoping that it will be a bipartisan deal.
Thank you, Congressman. We have a question from Kevin at KSFR. Congressman, are you ready to work with the speaker to come up with a deal?
Absolutely. I'm ready to work with the speaker to come up with a deal. I think that there are several members that are very responsible on both sides of the aisle, both on the Republican and Democratic side, in leadership who can strike a deal. What is really inhibiting us right now is that the speaker does not want to lose his job, and he is hinging this entire government shutdown on his ability to keep his speakership. That is not what public service is. We should be working on behalf of the American people to produce the best results possible. That's not happening. And so I am willing to work with any of my colleagues. That's why I started the bipartisan Southwest Caucus with my colleague, my Republican neighbor to the west, Mr. Juan Cisco Manning, and we've been able to introduce 3 bipartisan bills together. So we can work together, and people want to see this body function. But right now, it's very tough under these current conditions.
And Katie, I would just add to that. Speaker McCarthy shook on this deal in the White House. All the leadership agreed to the top line spending numbers that are encapsulated in the kind of appropriations bills that we've been working on for months. It's really hard to compromise and make a deal with someone who won't stick to that deal. That's the fundamental thing in politics. When you shake hands and you look each other in the eye and you say, we have a deal, you actually have to make good on that, or it becomes very hard to govern.